Good morning, students. Yesterday we had started chapter 8, the blue bead. I had introduced the chapter, started, the first page was done. We were introduced to the setting where this particular incident is taking place. The author on the onset focuses mostly on the environment, the setting, because the setting that is given plays a very vital part in this entire sequence of events that ultimately will happen. So without much ado, we will start our next page. So you can all turn to page number 94 in your books also. I'll be reading, explaining simultaneously. From the day perhaps 100 years ago when the sun had hatched him in a sandbank. So here the author is telling about the birth of this particular crocodile. Now crocodiles have a large lifespan. They live for hundreds of years. Crocodiles and turtles, they have huge lifespans. So crocodiles, when they hatch, the female crocodile makes a hole on the sandbank, gives its egg there. With the heat of the sun, the eggs incubate. Ultimately, the eggs hatch. When the eggs hatch, the crocodiles come into the water, and from that time, their life starts. So the author is surmising that this particular crocodile must have been born around 100 years ago. Imagine, around 100 years ago. It could be 100, could be more, could be less also. That is the author's imagination, right? Had hatched him in a sandbank and he had broken his shell. Shell is the eggshell, as I said. They are born from eggs. And got his head out and looked round. Meaning, as crocodiles are born, unlike human beings, they are independent. They can run, they can attack, they can feed themselves also. They are not taught by their parents also. They are only protected. In the rivers, in the water, the parents protect them. The rest, the crocodile, from infancy only they do it, right? So got his head out of the and looked round, ready to snap at anything. Snap is like try to attack anything. If you put your finger even to a baby crocodile, that finger can be cut badly, even dislocated, right? So got his head out and looked round, ready to snap at anything before he was even fully hatched. Imagine. And from that day, when he had once made for the waters, ready to fend for himself immediately. And from the day he was born, from the day he came out from his egg, from that day itself, the crocodile gets its independence, looks after himself, fends for himself, and does everything independently. So we're talking basically about this particular crocodile. Now remember, the crocodile in this story is the secondary hero, the second most important character. The main character is not yet introduced. So we are yet to come to the main character of the story, right? So he had lived by his brainless craft and ferocity. Now the crocodile from infancy has lived by the way of the jungle, the way of nature, catching animals in the water, attacking them, killing them, feeding on them, escaping the birds of prey and the great carnivorous fishes that eat baby crocodiles. He had proposed catching all the food he needed for storing it until they put it in the holes in the pan. So the crocodile from small only independently catches its prey, feeds on its prey, and lives and survives. Now another important thing about crocodiles is that from a hatch of around 20 crocodiles, maximum 1 or 2 crocodiles will ultimately survive. The rest are also killed by other crocodiles, big fishes, other whatever the things they have against. So other crocodiles don't survive. So very less percentage of crocodiles ultimately make it to adulthood. So he had prepared catching all the food he needed. So tepid water to live in and plenty of rotted food grew him to the length today, and with all the marshy food, with all the food that he got from the river bank, he was able to survive, and today he is a big, huge adult crocodile. Could be 60, 70 years old today. Now, nothing could pierce the thick skin, armored hide is the skin. Now, the crocodile skin on the top part of the body is very, very tough. Even a gun, a bullet of a gun cannot penetrate a crocodile skin from on top. It is so tough. Imagine. To kill a crocodile, you have to either stab it in the belly, that is the under part, the stomach, or the eye. Top, forget it. You cannot kill a crocodile by attacking it from on top, right? Anyway, not even a rifle bullets which would bounce off. Even if you try to shoot at it close range, a gun, the bullet will just touch the crocodile skin, reflect and bounce away like a bouncing ball. That is the strength of the body of the crocodile from on top. Only the eyes and the soft underarms appeared ablaze. If you have to kill a crocodile, the only part you can attack the crocodile is from the belly and from the eyes. He lived well in the river, sunning himself sometimes with other crocodiles. So he lived in this particular spot among all these logs of wood, camouflaged in the waters. Every day it would come out, have a sun bath, go back into the pond, into the flowing water, wait for its prey, have its meals, and life continued for the crocodile. This was his joint, this was his particular spot where he lived, where he was brought up, and where he is surviving today. So the magar, as well as, and they were not only he, there were many other crocodiles, other species of crocodile, magarmach and the gharials and the different type of thing, all lived in this particular spot here. So well as the long snout fish eating gharials on warm rocks and sandbanks. The crocodiles, when it is a bright sunny day, they come out to the riverbanks, they go and lie on some huge boulder, rest there. No need to fear because they know no one's going to attack them. No one has the guts to attack them. So they fearlessly come out of the water and relax and have a good time there. Where the sun dried the clay on them quite, and where they would plop off into the water in a moment if alarmed. So they relax, but they are very sensitive. They know when danger is approaching. If they get a sense of an enemy approaching them, within seconds they are back in the water. They are very flexible. Coming out of the water could be time, but getting back, they are very fast. So the big crocodile fed mostly on fish, but also on deer and monkeys that came to drink perhaps a duck or two. Now the bigger crocodiles, whatever fish was available in the river, they would feed on that. Sometimes a deer or a monkey or sometimes even ducks would be swimming on top, and the crocodile would attack them, kill them and put an end to them. But sometimes here at the fort, he fed on pie dogs. Sometimes, very rarely, these pie dogs are these jungly dogs, जो गली में आते हैं ना, the dogs that you find in these gullies and all, of no, I think particular breed, they would come to drink water, and unfortunately, while they would drink water, they would be attacked, and sometimes they would also become meals for the crocodiles. Okay, so the pie dogs, full of parasites, or a skeleton cow. Sometime a cow drowned way ahead in the river would come floating down. The carcass, the crocodile would even feed on the carcass of the cow. And sometimes he went down to the burning ghats. Now you know what ghats are, where human beings are cremated. Sometimes children are not cremated. When the children die, they are either buried or they are thrown directly into the waters of the fast flowing rivers. And when these bodies float down, they become meals for these crocodiles. So the crocodile had plenty of food coming its way, and it survived and got healthy, got strong and very fit, very active. So burning ghats, and found the half burnt bodies of Indians cast in. Sometimes the body would be half burnt, and the crocodile would make a meal of it. Besides him, in the shoals as he lay waiting glimmered a blue gem. Now, where this crocodile was relaxing, deep, not very deep, but the water was crystal clear, very clear. Right down, there was this particular blue color stone, referred to as the blue gem. And the water being transparent and clear, if you stood on top, you looked into the water, you could see this gem or see this transparent stone at the bottom of the river. It was not a gem, though it was sand-warm glass that had been rolled about in the river for long. Basically, the author is clarifying also here and saying it is not a gem, but it was a piece of glass, because it was coming down from right down from on top and rolling with friction. It had rolled and rolled and rolled, and now it had become into a round piece of glass. So when you look at it, it looked like a beautiful semi-precious stone. Okay, by chance it was perforated. Perforated is like pierced. So this particular piece of glass was round with a hole in the center also. Could be the neck of a bottle that had been broken, rolling, it had become round, and center was hole made there. Okay, so by chance it was perforated right through the neck of a bottle, perhaps. Here the author also guessing, perhaps it was the neck of a bottle, and that was ultimately referred to the blue bead. Now remember, this is the name of your story, the blue bead. So the blue bead is nothing but, it's not a bead exact, it's a piece of glass with a center hole there, which will play a very important role later on in this story. Now, in the shrill, noisy village above the ford. Now we are coming to the next part. This was the first part of the story where the author has described the scene where the crocodile lived. Now we are going to a place where the main hero, that is a 12-year-old girl, is living. She is a girl of nature, belonging to the forest, living in the forest, knowing the ways of the forest. So in the shrill, noisy village above the ford, ford is the place where this river is, out of a mud house, the same colored as the ground, came a little girl. Now we are introduced to our hero of the story. And this particular girl lived in a hutment. Hutment are these kacha houses that are built by these Adivasis, by these people who live in the forest. A thin, starveling child dressed in an earth-colored rag. Now, this is showing her poverty also. She is dressed in a very, very shabby clothes, not very attractive clothing, dull, brownish color. She had torn the rag into to make a skirt and a sari. Sibia, now her name was Sibia, get this name correct. Sibia was eating the last of her meal. When she is introduced to us, we are introduced to her and she is eating something. Chapati wrapped round a smear of green chili and rancid butter. Rancid butter is the butter locally made from milk that their parents make. So she's having a roti with some chilies and some butter. That's a meal for them. And she divided this also to make it seem more and bit it, showing strength, white teeth. So she would very, very hungrily but patiently divide the roti that she had into pieces, eat it with relish, eat it with satisfaction, and she is quenching her thirst and quenching her hunger with her ebony hair. Ebony is brownish reddish hair she had. 12-year-old. This is, you will get the character of Sibia also. And great eyes that her eyes were sparkling, sharp, and her skin of oiled brown cream. She was a happy, immature child woman. Child woman because she's 12-year-old. Within a few years, she'll mature and she will ultimately become a beautiful young woman. So the author is also referring to her as a child woman, immature child woman, about 12 years old, barefoot, having no slippers, no shoes, nothing, of course, and often goosey cold on a winter morning, and born to toil. Now she being living and being brought up in such an environment, out here the girls are born to stay at home, to work at home, and to toil and earn for the family. That is the life of a girl child born under such circumstances. In all her life, she had never owned anything but a rag. Now, this is her poverty. She had never had decent clothes. She had never owned even an anna. Anna is the currency that was used in India many years back. Not a piece, not a pie. Even to buy, say, a handful of blown grass bead from that stall in the bazaar where they were piled like. So she had her own fancy, she had her own liking, but she was so poor. Her parents were so poverty and rich that they had nothing to give her. So she survived on whatever there was there, or one or the thin glass bangles that the man kept on a stack, and you could choose which color you'd have. And she was so much like children, especially girl children, attracted to jewelry, attracted to the bangles that were being sold in the marketplace. But when she went there, they could never afford it, and her parents would never buy it. So my students, we'll end here today, and it's on page number 95. The next time, the next video I put up, I'll continue from here. Goodbye. God bless.